Hey folks, how's it going? Today is the day I've been waiting for. It is the opportunity to take the Lowrider S out on its maiden voyage, and I'll be giving you my thoughts and feelings and first impressions on the first ride I take on it. And I will say I will be most likely making a lot of comparisons to how it feels compared to the Fat Boy I had before. But anyway, enough of this. I'm going to hit the road. We'll see you in a bit. Okay, folks, here we are at the park. I've been on the bike for a little while now. You can see there's still some snow out there. It's still a little sloppy, but not too bad. But let's get to what I thought of the old Lowrider here, especially compared to the Fat Boy. And the first thing I will say that I noticed on this bike was that it's a little, I would say a little more top heavy was the first thing I noticed taking it off the kickstand yesterday. The reason for that is probably because it sits a little higher than the Fat Boy, so that was the first thing that was noticeable anyway. But also it was the suspension. Now a lot of people talk about the back suspension because it's got an inch more stroke. I believe it's the shock off the Heritage they used. So it's obviously noticeable, but I actually found it was the front. The front suspension on this bike is miles better than the Fat Boy or any other bike I've rode actually. Now it's got the inverted forks on it, which definitely make a difference, but it was fantastic as far as suspension goes. And same thing with the handling. This bike is a lot more, I guess you would say, flickable than the Fat Boy for sure, or really any other bike I've been on. Like I say, it's lighter, so it's also got obviously a lot slimmer wheels, or tires I should say, than the Fat Boy had, and it's a lot more maneuverable. And that thing, it takes corners like a dream, much tighter. It's been pretty beautiful to ride so far. Now, one thing I noticed about this bike was where I usually put my foot down on this side where the pipes are, I actually put my leg against the pipes a couple times. That hurts. So with this bike, I actually have to put my leg down a little bit further out than I'm used to, but I learned awfully quick. And the other thing is the brake. Now, if you notice, you know, the brake pedal there, it's not very big compared to the Fat Boy pedal. So when I'm on the foot pegs and I was going, there's actually a couple of times when I would put my foot and I'd miss the pedal. I had to turn my foot in, and actually the reason I have to turn my foot in like that is because of this guy. So it does make a difference. My leg's not hitting on it, but I do, if I want to hit that pedal, I have to turn my foot in a little bit. So actually I use probably the front brakes more than well, I've been using them more today. I actually use them quite a lot regardless. Which, let's talk about the braking while we're at it. Now the Fat Boy had the single disc. This is obviously the dual disc brakes. In my opinion, I don't know if this bike really needed dual disc on the Fat Boy, which is a heavier bike. The front brakes worked just fine for me. I had no problem with the front or back, but I guess you know, better safe than sorry. If you want to go a little overkill on brakes, that's not a bad thing. But they work perfectly as well. Okay, comfort on this bike. You can see this seat is pretty plain, nothing special about it, just a solo seat. However, just for the little bit I've been on it so far, no problem whatsoever. I actually like that it's kind of plush in that back lumbar. I do feel like I sit further back on it, right up against there, and it's actually quite comfortable. I found that the seating position is no problem. If anything, the only thing I really got to get used to is the foot pegs as opposed to the floorboards that I'm used to. I do have an old Sportster that has just foot pegs, but it doesn't get rode much. So that's one thing that I'm going to have to definitely get used to. So for example, I usually wear cat boots when I ride. Today I've got on the shoes, and the reason for that is I just want to have a little more feeling on my feet to know where they're at. But once I get used to it, should not be an issue. Now let's talk a little bit about shifting. This bike shifts pretty much the same as every other Harley I've had. There is one difference though, and it's kind of an odd one. I'm wondering if I'm gonna have to do something with the linkage. Actually, when you're downshifting and you're shifting from second down to first, the lever almost doesn't have enough of stroke. I actually have had to lift it up with my foot and then press it down to get it into first, which is different. I've never had that issue before, but it is possible. It's just an adjustment maybe with the linkage, I'm hoping, because this did come standard with the mid controls. So let's have a look at where the gauge is. So the gauge on this guy is up on the risers on the handlebars. Now it used to be on the dash. There used to be 2 gauges here. In 2022 they moved them up here, or moved it into one just up here. Reason being, I guess some riders were saying they would rather have it on the handlebars rather than on the dash there, just so they didn't have to look down. Now my Fat Boy, obviously it had the big gauge right here, and I never had a problem seeing it. I'm assuming it's probably more for people with full face helmets. They might have to actually, you know, look down to see it. I just have to drop my eyes, but I don't mind one way or the other where they have it. However, there was one thing I didn't take into account with having the speedometer on the risers, and that is all this. So I never really took into consideration that cowl or cap, whatever you want to call it, that sits on the bars that I had off or took off, that it obviously hides all this. So I'm not sure how I feel about having all this wiring just hanging out. We'll see what I think eventually. It is possible I might put something, you know, who knows, maybe this windscreen won't work that well and I'll want to put a little fairing on it. I'm not really a fairing guy, but you never know. We'll see going forward. I just don't know how I feel about that just right now. Okay, let's talk power. This is the 117. The Fat Boy I had before was the 114. Really not a huge difference, 3 cubic inches. Spec wise, you're getting, you know, several more foot-pounds of torque, several more horsepower. It's in the break-in stage right now, so I haven't had it out on the highway to really, you know, crack it open to really see exactly how good it's gonna go. But just from riding around the city, it is a little bit more peppy, I guess you would say, but it's definitely not a huge increase. You know, going from a 114 to a 117, it's a little bump. That's what it is. It's just a little bump. So you know, don't hop off a 114, hop on this and think it's going to be a completely different experience. Now maybe if you're hopping off like a twin cam 88 or something, it might, but from going from 114 to 117, it's all right. I really won't know for sure until a guy gets out on the highway and really cracks her open. Okay, so my last comments on my first impression anyway is that, you know, the Fat Boy is a very stylish, elegant, cool bike. This one seems almost a little more rough around the edges, more stripped down. You know, it's a little lighter, it's a little shorter, it's a a little bit more powerful. Suspension and handling far exceeds what the Fat Boy has. But long story short, it's a great bike. You couldn't go wrong if you got one of these. But anyway, that's it for today. We'll see you next time, and have a good day, folks.